Hello, Shortcuts. This is video 2 for Wednesday, July 26th. This is the classic rock and pop playlist. Almost exclusively classic rock this time around, but with a few little quirks, as you're about to see. Oh, 2 soundtracks as well. And interesting soundtracks they are as well. So, as always, if you enjoy these videos, please subscribe, leave a comment, all that good stuff. Yeah, what a selection this is, and this might well be the first time that we've ever led off the classic rock selection with a Pink Floyd album. And isn't it about time? Or maybe we did Dark Side of the Moon at one point. I am going to do a Dark Side of the Moon video very soon, comparing and contrasting Japanese, UK, Australian presses. So watch out for that. But I'm going to talk about a different Pink Floyd record. A good few years ago now, a good friend of mine called me mid-afternoon and said, I think it was either that night or the next night, what are you doing? And I said, I'm not sure. And he said, I just got some tickets to see Roger Waters play out Acer Arena. He's bringing in some multi-million-dollar sound system, and he's playing the record Animals from start to finish. Now, I only had peripheral understanding of Animals because if I were to categorize myself in the Pink Floyd oeuvre, I would say I'm a Dave Gilmour guy. I am not a fan of The Wall. I just find Roger Waters to be pretty austere and domineering and unpleasant to listen to on occasion. And I can't do his solo albums at all. So I thought, okay, I'll give it a go. And I would say that experience in Acer Arena, one of the greatest gigs I've ever been to, by the way, was the first time I heard Animals from start to finish. And Roger Waters' band enacted out some of the Orwellian scenes on stage, including the famous dinner scene and various things. And a massive pig circled the Acer Arena. I think it was the Acer at the time. It's a while ago now. Anyway, I came out of that experience thinking, well, you know what? I got to invest some time in Animals because I really enjoyed the live experience. You know, Pink Floyd's 10th album, probably the first record where they became overtly political, where it wasn't so much about inner feelings and that psychedelic longing, missing friends, and it became something that was a bit more visceral and angry, and that's Roger Waters, right? I mean, he wrote all but one of the songs. He co-wrote Dogs with Dave Gilmour, which is it a coincidence? It's my favorite song on the record. But it is brilliant. It's undeniable. And this is the Japanese first press. Now, what a sleeve that is. To be fair to Roger Waters, he designed the sleeve and he imagined it with this company they're called Hypgosis, and there's a story behind it. You can read it. But it is a magnificent sleeve, and this is where the Japanese insistence on high quality just really plays off. This is absolutely magnificent. Then, little things like this. This copy comes with the still present Pink Floyd Animals unused sticker from 1977 this was released. All inserts are absolutely perfect condition, and the vinyl is magnificent. What a record, and what a legacy. is it fair to say this was the beginning and the end of Pink Floyd as a band and Pink Floyd as a Roger Waters ego trip? I don't know. I mean, we can debate it. We do know it wasn't much longer after this record, Through the Wall, etc., that everything fell apart, and the value that Roger Waters saw in the other band members just fell away. But still, though, Pink Floyd, Animals. There was interestingly, the remaster version, not just a remaster, a remix from a few years back. And I know some of you grabbed the vinyl because one or two of you came round and we played some of it. That vinyl plagued by poor quality vinyl and noise. But what an interesting mix. I still come back to this pressing. Over the years now, I've gathered up. The Aussie pressing is horrific. Just don't go there. I have a US Columbia pressing that I really like, but it is not a patch on the Japanese first press, which this is. It's just magnificent, if you like that record. All right, let's talk about something a little bit more obscure, maybe. This is Mystery to Me. Pink Floyd. Fleetwood Mac, 1973. Another amazing sleeve. Look at that. And even more, look at this. Absolutely magnificent. This was the Bob Welch era Pink Floyd. I keep Pink Floyd in the mind. Fleetwood Mac. This is after Peter Green has left and before Buckingham and Nicks have joined. They're a dual guitar band. They're really moving away from the blues sound and starting to embrace that Laurel Canyon pop, which became their calling card in the mid-70s. Bob Welch is a really cool singer. He sounds magnificent. The opening track, Emerald Eyes, I think is one of Fleetwood Mac's best ever. This record has a bit of a cult following, and this is a Japanese first press. Now, this is also a Japanese first press, talking about cult bands. This is Captain Beyond, members of Iron Butterfly and some other prog bands from the UK in the early 70s. This is one of my favourite hard rock albums of the 70s. The Japanese pressing is magnificent. The opening track, Dancing Madly Backwards on a Sea of Air, is worth the price of admission alone. It is the most riff-tastic, unbelievable sound. It's on the Green Warner label. This record is on Spotify. Listen to it. It's incredible. Someone should pick this up. All right, now we've got a whole bunch of classics that have come in, and I'll split them up, but I don't get this that often, so I'm calling it out when I do the Beatles White Album. This is, you can see it's numbered A22404, and it comes complete with all the posters and portraits and all the business that made this one of the most iconic albums of the 1970s. For those of you who haven't seen those extras, there's all the lyric sheets. But it's this. There's John, George, Paul, and Ringo. Now, interestingly, fellow club member and very good friend of mine, Fergal, he and I are big fans of this record. And Fergal picked up a copy of the recent remaster out of Abbey Road's studios of the White Album, and we did a compare and contrast with this exact pressing. And the conclusion was kind of interesting. There's no doubt that the recent repress has opened out the soundstage, and you can certainly hear the bass guitar more clearly, and there's an airiness to the whole experience which doesn't exist in the original pressing. But this is what we thought. It just doesn't sound like the White Album. The White Album has a sound signature. It has a George Martin did an extraordinary amount of work to create a level of kind of an oral experience from acoustic Hey Julia through to thrashing Revolution through to funky Sexy Sadie, and he had a huge job. And he made it sound incredible. And I just don't think that the recent repress improves. It changes. It definitely changes, but it does not improve. One of the all-time greats. And yeah, I'm keeping this. I love the Japanese first press. I think it sounds phenomenal. A lot of folks online and in the blogs think that this is the best ever sounding pressing of Abbey Road. This is the 1973 repress. First time I've ever had it with OB. I know a few of you out there have this record and rave about it. This is also the Let It Be first press on amazing hard cardboard. This is like a chunk of wood. And now the mythology of Let It Be has been exposed through that incredible documentary by the New Zealand filmmaker Peter something or other. I've forgotten his surname, but yeah, just a legendary record, legendary pressing. Now here are a couple of pop records from the 80s that I've not had before. I'm going to talk about soundtracks next. So, the 80s, when it comes to pop, was kind of a fallow period, except for what I would call a series of singular geniuses who created almost genres onto their own. And I have two examples here. And interestingly, another person who I think of in that way is a guest appearance on one of these records. I'm going to start with this one. Sade's Diamond Life. This is her debut album. Now, I've had some later Sade records before. This one is significantly harder to find. Really tightly held. I've never seen one in this condition. When you think that Sade's debut record kicks off with Smooth Operator, that gives you an idea of just how sophisticated a songwriter she was. And the genre that I would argue she effectively started is, I guess, what became known as neo-soul. That shimmering kind of 80s production soul led to the likes of Erykah Badu and others. But this record, I mean, she's absolutely gorgeous too, isn't she? It's just a cool record. And I don't know, jazz soul makes it feel a bit disposable. It really isn't. It's magnificent. This next record is cut from similar cloth. This is someone who embraced world music to create a pop dynamic, I don't know, probably has never yet been surpassed. I mean, this album is so confident to not put anything on the front sleeve, instead all on the back. Peter Gabriel's Soul is the most sophisticated, crafted song cycle you can hear in the whole of that decade. The other person who I was thinking of when I was thinking about this idea of singular songwriters creating something that's their own, almost their own subgenre is, of course, Kate Bush. Kate Bush, and she duets with Peter Gabriel on this record in the most unbelievably beautiful song. Don't Give Up being probably the saddest admonition of the Thatcher years in the UK. But what's incredible is it may not even be the best song on the record. I mean, Sledgehammer was to call it a phenomenon doesn't even really describe it. I remember it won like 10, 12 awards for the video alone. Big Time, Mercy Street, incredible. But the song that I love is on side 2. Let's get the exact title. It's In Your Eyes. Man, that song just cracks my heart open. And what a singer, what a voice. I know he was clearly in the Bono mid-juror political activism phase of his life at this time. But it doesn't really creep into the record. The record doesn't sound like that. It's an amazing album. And, if you don't have a copy, seek it out. I love the Japanese copy. I think it sounds great. But really, any copy of that record sounds great. It's just magnificent. All right, I got 2 soundtracks to talk to you about. Cruisin' and Storm Riders. I'm going to start with Cruisin'. We haven't had this one before. Cruisin', Al Pacino's trip into the dark underground of pre-AIDS gay scene. I think it was I'm pretty sure it was New York. Movie was a flop, but it's, I guess, got its own legacy. And really, you couldn't really imagine the soundtrack of that movie being anything other than music that came out of CBGB's. The country bluegrass and blues club that didn't really play country bluegrass and blues. This soundtrack is about punk and noise and new wave. It's got a series of songs by the Germs, the legendary Germs. I think they only ever made one album plus the songs from this soundtrack. It's got the opening track is by Willie DeVille, who was a stalwart in CBGB's. You've got Mutiny, John Hyatt, The Cripples, Lion's Share by the Germs, I think is the highlight. Very incredible soundtrack, just kind of unique, one of a kind, and really sets a different tone when you slap it on the player. Now, the Storm Riders was a 80s surf movie. It was a pretty average movie, kind of a feel-good surfing story. But what I love about the Japanese take on this record is that they recorded it on translucent blue vinyl, and this is the white label promo version. White label promo of Storm Riders. Now, this has to be a who's who of the greatest of Australian 80s music. Probably only missing Men in All. You get Split Enz, Moving Pictures, Life Speeds Up by the Church, The Models, Australian Crawl, Little River Band, The Sunny Boys, Jojo Zepps and the Falcons, Mark Gillespie, and the pièce de résistance, the 8-minute closer by the Church called Is This Where You Live, which is one of their all-time great songs and doesn't exist anywhere else as far as I know. There's some scenes in the movie. Brilliant soundtrack. And I love how Aussie it is. All right, we've got 5 kind of classic rock staples to go, although maybe this one isn't so much of a staple. Frank Zappa, Joe's Garage, Act 1, the Japanese first press of the 1979 3-act rock opera that is Joe's Garage. The cast, central scrutinizer Larry Frank Zappa, Ike Willis, Dale Bosio, Denny Wally, and Al Malkin, with the whole story explained here on this magnificent hard cardboard gatefold. Oh gosh, I hadn't even noticed. It's one of these internal fold-out businesses. Look at that. Can you see that? That is amazing. Frank Zappa's Joe's Garage Act 1. And then to close shortcuts for this week, we have 4 pressings that you have all told me sound incredible, and I'm sharing them for those of you out there who do not yet have the Japanese first press of After the Gold Rush. Led Zeppelin 2, Led Zeppelin 4, or arguably Queen's greatest record, Sheer Heart Attack. These are the best of the best Japanese pressings. We now know what they are, and they send them to us. How lucky are we? All right. Now, I hope you found something to enjoy in that wild list. As always, pricing will go out 9 p.m. on Wednesday. If you like what you listen to, please subscribe, leave me a comment. Apparently that does good for this little endeavor of mine. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you all 9 p.m. on Wednesday. Bye.